listeners, and welcome to a Geek Tragedy. You're right there, Holly. You're laughing your ass off already.
Yeah, because every time the countdown starts to tell us we're about to record, you do something silly that makes me laugh.
Well, I did just go. Okay. Well, I'm Stephen, known online as or Plague Mantle, for various reasons, and I am your host. I'd like to welcome to the pod the extremely giggly and sometimes, and very occasionally, erudite human Holly Properly is my best friend. Hello, Holly. How are you?
Hello.
You get it all out of order, by the way.
I'm so sorry. I'm well, thank you. I'm quite tired. It's been a long few weeks, but
It has.
I'm here now, and after I finish being here for the day, I'm going to go and have a nap.
Oh, sensible. Like it. It's good.
Yeah.
Have a nap. And of course, our much more laconic and very unsalvaged man and crafter par excellence, Mark Cordory. How are you, Mark?
I'm very well, thank you, Stephen.
Oh, good.
Do you want more?
Well, usually you say you've been spent a week locked in a room or something making stuff. But how are the feathers going?
Oh, the feathers are finished.
Oh,
I have
good.
no more feathers to cut. Yay!
Have you I've been away from social media for the last 4 or 5 days. Have you been?
The
posting
costume
up?
is complete.
Nice.
The client is happy. I now need to just package it up and get it sent over to the States, and I will never see it again. Much as I loved it, and I think it looks okay, and he thinks it looks great, which is good. I never want to have to do that job again.
Well, there you go. Look at that. It's been if you're a long-term listener, you've heard the story of Mark crafting his first mold for ages, being happy about it, making sucky sounds coming out of it, and now he's like, "Thank fuck, it's gone."
There's a lot more work than I'd planned on doing.
And him behind the scenes, of course, is our producer and long-suffering Kit, who shall be named Kit, or the most excellent Kit, or the perfect Kit. I can't remember which one it is, Holly.
Best Kit.
Best Kit.
Ethics.
Kit. There you are. It was
Ethics
asked me
Kit.
specifically not to bang on the table today, so I'm going to try very hard not to do that, although I probably have already. No making points. I'm just going to gently put my hands down.
Yeah.
There we go. Right, that's us. We're finished for the day now.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Really enjoyed that. Good
Yeah,
insights,
stuff.
everyone.
Well, not that anyone cares, but I'm also vaguely okay. I'm quite tired. Also been on a couple of weeks. Yeah, they're always just going to ask me.
I was just about to ask, but then we went straight into introducing Kit.
That's the order.
Yeah, but we don't introduce Kit and then ask you how you are.
Because that's a weird way round.
Oh, good Lord.
But yes, we're recording on a different day than usual because I was not well during the week, but we are here now, and I'm much better. And at the moment, we are on a roll. We have been talking about the movement of various forms of literature through different styles of media. I don't know how we got onto that, really. We just we kicked off the whole pod again, and we started off, that's what we're going to talk about. We just had a chat, and we're like, that's the thing. And it's kind of stuck for a little while. We'll probably move out of it in a bit, but we've walked ourselves into the world of Star Wars, which has been really good fun. It's interesting because, Mark, as he's professed many times, has mostly stuck to the first 3 films, and we're going to talk about why he's done that during the pod. I've watched everything religiously since it came out in the 70s all the way up to now, and Holly kind of only really got back into it in in lockdown.
In
really.
lockdown, yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting trio of points of view about it, which is nice because you're really still buzzed up on it all, Holly, and I'm kind of in the medium, and Mark's kind of like, there you go, see. But we've done 2 whole pods so far, one of which was entirely about music, which we kind of accidentally slipped in. I know we said we talked about books at the end of the first one, but we ended up kind of going to music because we kind of impassioned ourselves in a discussion about Lord of the Rings music, and then we were like, right, let's do it about Star Wars. So we got stuck doing that. But this week, we really want to round up the topic and finish up. So we're looking at the books and the new Disney Empire and maybe a bit of Lego and Clone Wars period and bits and pieces. We'll try and squeeze that into an hour or so. So we're going to give that a go. But this recording comes in a happy aftermath. We're just literally at the end of the elections, and our own evil empire has fallen us across the UK. We're thrown off the shackles of a corrupt and ruthless regime. And it's really important that we kind of celebrate stories like Star Wars, because as we do that, we still have to kind of battle against the rise of our own First Order in the form of Reform UK. And, I don't care if I'm saying that because fuck fascism. And yeah, definitely. And anyway, yeah, we're a little dazed, but we're gonna get into things. So, as promised, sorry,
We're a little dazed.
yeah, we're a little dazed.
Yeah.
Honestly, after the elections, I'm a little dazed. I'm a little surprised that things like, they got 4 seats, for example, and like
5.
10% the vote or whatever it was.
Was it 5 in the
5, yeah,
end?
5 in the end. Yeah.
5.
Sorry, we're
Yeah.
only just coming out of it all.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Well, I think that's why we do things like this, right? It's a constant battle of attrition against fascism.
And
That's what this podcast's all about.
It is through the joy of nerdiness and geeky things.
Are we transitioning into a political podcast?
Absolutely
Everything's
not. I
political.
do not have the brain capacity.
Everything is political, one way or the other.
True dat.
True that. So we're going to start off in section 1, the rise of Timothy Zahn. So you all know who Timothy Zahn is, obviously.
Nope.
No, so Mark doesn't, but Holly's probably going to cover that for us. I'm just going to bring up my notes over here so I can pretend that I know what I'm talking about. I do know what I'm talking about, really. That's a silliness. But like at the end of episode 1, I talked really proudly about the influence of the tabletop role-playing games, and how that influence has affected current stuff. But that's kind of gone through the medium of books and novels, and Timothy Zahn being a big part of that, because most of us have read them. This is where the rise of the new Star Wars universe begins, and there's references to Timothy Zahn's work all the way through the Disney universe, which we'll talk about in a bit. And we want to do a quick shout out to Apollo ACCS, or accounts maybe, or accessories. We don't know who that is, but go on Spotify. You kindly said nice words. Holly, you were going to wave your arms and say something. Go.
Yes, I was. I was just going to say, let's just call you Apollo and say thank you. But
I don't want to be called Apollo.
no, not you. Not you.
Oh,
this is all going terribly wrong.
You see what we have to work with here.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you for commenting. We appreciate that. And we also are very much looking forward to talking about the books. I was recently inspired to read them, and Holly has just read through loads of them. And the Star Wars conversations inspired me to get this new hoodie. I got myself a new Star Wars hoodie. I'm very happy with.
Very swish.
Doing a
I
little
like it
Star
very
Wars
much.
jig.
I like the fact that it has like pre-made thumb holes.
Yes, that has made me happy as well. And I'm not telling around and doing a 12, but I love the back. The Galactic Tours is good. Anyway, mostly Mark and I will be prodding Holly's brains because Mark asked in episode 5 who Thrawn was, because he hasn't read those books yet. And we've been banging on about like he's going to love them if he reads them, for reasons. But let's talk Heir to the Empire through Dark Force Rising through The Last Command, the best villain ever, Grand Admiral Thrawn, how he marked a much more intelligent change to the Star Wars storytelling. Holly, what would you like to kick off with?
So I think I'd like to kick off with a little caveat of I don't read a lot of sci-fi. I don't, and Timothy Zahn's he moved Star Wars away from that whole idea of like science fantasy, and the writing was very much rooted in science fiction, and I don't read a lot of science fiction. It's not a genre that it just seems to take me a lot longer to read and digest and process than other genres. So I've been a bit trepidatious about reading Star Wars novels in general, but I loved Grand Admiral Thrawn in Clone Wars and in Rebels, the animated TV shows. I loved him. I thought he was just a brilliant villain because he is everything about he's everything about the Empire without having that sort of, like flouncy look at me, I'm wearing a big black helmet and a cape and I've got a lightsaber. He's very much that kind of that bureaucratic side to things. He's not kind of running around and engaging in one-on-one combat with people. He's very measured and very calm and very, very clever. And I think that makes him a lot scarier than a lot of the Force using Star Wars villains, because they don't have that kind of, he doesn't have that dark side element to him. He's not a Force user. He's not like a Jedi or a Sith. He's just a guy.
He's just a bloke.
He's just a bloke, but he's terrifying. And so Stephen bought me the Timothy Zahn trilogy for Christmas in 2023, and they were the first books that I read in 2024 to start my year of reading, and I absolutely fell in love with them. And I fell in love with them because they were all, again, they were like, it's where Star Wars should have gone next, in my opinion. Like, rather than just rebooting 4, 5, and 6 into 7, 8, and 9, that's where they should have gone. They should have, this is the trilogy that they should have used. This is the trilogy they should have built on, because it shows the aftermath of Empire a lot better, and it shows from both kind of like how difficult it is for the rebels to become an actual stable governmental force, and how difficult it is for the rebels to build everything back after they've been collapsed and defeated.
Right. So I think you've just answered my question, but this is set immediately after the original trilogy, right?
5 years.
That's when I
It's
think
about 5
that's when I think
years.
the films, the next trilogy of films, should have been set immediately after.
I think it's 5 years.
It's
I
about
think,
5 years, yeah.
Immediately enough in the grand scheme of the galaxy.
Yeah, so it kind of, it starts with, so you've got like the two factions still. So you've got Leia and Han are kind of involved in politics and in setting up, in sort of setting up like the government of the galaxy, and trying to get the, do they call it the New Republic, Stephen? I can't remember.
I
Or is
think
it
so.
like the New Republic?
I don't think it's the New Republic. I think it's just the New Republic.
The New Republic, to set up the New Republic, and to widen that its influence in the galaxy, like across the different planets. And at the same time, the Empire still has like footholds in certain planets, and in certain kind of jurisdictions almost, and their influence is still there, and it's still quite strong, and they're still trying to take back control of a lot of different areas, but they have no resources, and the Empire is built on having to have resources to be successful.
You get that strong Outer Rim vibe. So you get that strong kind of, in the central core, the rebellion is still strong. The New Republic is strong, but the further out they go, the more whimsical their concept of control becomes. And then out there you've got smugglers and the criminal fraternity, and then this massive fleet of Star Destroyers that Thrawn has, which terrifies the smugglers and the rebellion, because if you go out there trying to form pacts and alliances, you might run into them.
Yeah.
But equally, Thrawn's terrified of his Star Destroyers because he only has a certain number of them and he can't build anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. It feels very Firefly, like that kind of that. I think Firefly, a lot of Firefly might have been built from Heir to the Empire, because
the smugglers and stuff. Yeah, definitely.
Like, because you've got that sort of that whole kind of central, like the central core of planets that are all with one government, and then the further out you go, the less control there is.
What were you going to ask there, Mark?
Well, I was going to ask whether it geographically, whether it expands the actual universe, because that was the other thing that I felt everything just focused around the same planets, the same, and it just felt very. You've got an entire bloody universe out there, the galaxies, the infinity of space, and it just seems to be. That's what's pissed me off about Star Wars.
I think a couple of points then for you to look at there, Ollie, would be like, do you think it was a good idea that they stuck with people like they bring in a couple of new smugglers, famously Talon Card, and they bring in like a new force shooter called Mara Jade, who was quite cool because she wasn't like very damned and distressy, which kind of like a lot of the era stuff was about, but she was quite cool. But they stuck with a lot of the old heroes, and I've often wondered if that was a good idea, whether they should have just, like they did with the movies, gone with new actors, new heroes, for the writing. But there's Timothy Zahn. He's not George Lucas.
No,
what do you think?
I'm really happy that they stuck with that Timothy Zahn stuck with the characters that he did, but he didn't force them together to do everything. He didn't make them do everything together. So Luke would go off for months at a time in the trilogy to just go and do something completely separate, and he'd meet new people, and he'd expand the world in the direction of the Force and training. And he went back to where he trained with Yoda, and was kind of looking at, are there new dark side users on the rise, but Leia then got the opportunity to like meet an entirely new species of people called the Nogri, who are an incredible addition to the Star Wars universe.
Honogger. That was their home planet.
That was their home planet. You're right. The thing about the books is that it's quite difficult to know how Timothy Zahn wanted to pronounce everything. So I just kind of guess.
So what makes them interesting?
They are like they're super stealthy assassins. There's naturally, and they are incredible bodyguards. And Grand Admiral Thrawn uses one as a bodyguard. And they are like they're just really like Timothy Zahn goes a lot into their culture when they're on their home planet, a lot into how they relate to one another, how their hierarchies work, who they are as a species, what their history is. And I don't want to give too much away, Mark, in case you do read it. But
that would be my question. Is it an audiobook?
Most likely.
Okay.
I think so.
I might get it on the audiobook.
Also worth saying, Beans, well, I think they explore places like Kashyyyk a lot better.
Oh, they do.
History to the Wookiees.
Okay.
Kashyyyk is brilliant because they I think you get a lot more opportunity to kind of because when you're writing, because in literature you have to build an image in your reader's mind. You can't just show them something on screen and say this is how this is. You have to build it in your mind. There's a lot more consideration that's gone into, like, well, if Wookiees live in trees, how do they get around? Oh look, they've like there are all these like fantastic natural vines, but they also have turbo lifts next to trees, and it's just, I think he's done a really good job at fleshing out what was quite a bare bones sort of world in the first place,
with help from the tabletop role-playing game,
with help from West End Games, and he's brought all of that kind of together into a really cohesive story that sets out with, there's still a lot of tension between the New Republic and just regular people that just live in the galaxy. Because
can you talk a little bit about how he's made the Force much less of a blunt object? Because obviously, Mark, in the films there's always a Force, right, and it's going to be more powerful than everything else. But what do you do in the books?
He found a way to nullify the Force entirely. There's a planet on which there are creatures. I cannot remember what they're called for the life of me.
Isilmari, isn't it? Isilamiri?
Isilamiri. And they're basically like
Miracure. He has really weird Miracure.
I kind of, they're basically like, they're born and then they just exist like in one place on a tree, and they never move or anything, but they nullify the Force around them for
like
a certain
sloths.
distance. I always saw them in my head as sloths.
Well, they're described like salamanders, but there are basically predators on their planet which hunt down like the life energy that the Force gives off. So they've learned just like naturally to have a big bubble of there's no Force here.
Yeah. So
nothing to see here. Move along.
If you put them,
these are not the sloths you're looking for.
If you put loads of them together, that bubble of forcelessness expands. So you can have them, like groups of them at like various intervals. And so what they do is they go to this planet, raid it for these creatures, put them all on like stands, and then just carry them around.
The mental image there is not good.
Yeah, they describe it as frames, nutrient frames.
Nutrient frames.
They just kind of like hang on them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's worth pointing out that like they go down this whole different road for cloning, right? So there's no the Clone Wars must have been very different. I don't think Zahn touched on it. I don't know actually if he does, but they've got these cloning tubes from a planet called Wayland that they find, and they use them just basically to clone the best stormtroopers, right? They go like, these are our best guys, let's just clone them. and they make a lot of really good stormtroopers and whatever. But they also clone a Jedi Master called Joruus C'baoth. And he's
That's
a bit,
the names as well.
yeah, and he's a bit.
God,
He's a
the
bit.
names in Star Wars are awful.
He
Carry
can't
on.
cope with being cloned, and he goes a bit odd. And they have to use Thrawn's using the Islamiri. So
Salamiri.
that's what I said. To control him. But yeah, I think that the books are a really good way of kind of stepping into the next stage of storytelling for Star Wars. I think from the films through the role-playing game and into the books, when it was such a stagnant area of nothing, the ability to cover, as Holly was saying, much more of the universe in a written format, to give you to really get your teeth into the flesh of places like Kashyyyk, and how vastly difficult it was for the New Republic to move around, and how and it's a good reflection of life. How hard it is to be able to governmentally control somewhere that's got resistant elements inside it.
But were there space battles as well?
Yeah, there were a few,
That's
but
good.
they weren't ever. They weren't the main focus of anything ever. There was always a reason. So
there was really good tension build up to them, though. You wanted them every time you turn the page. You're thinking, where is it? And then when it happens, you're like, it's really.
Most importantly, no Death Stars.
No Death Stars.
Then I might read it. I might give it a go.
I think, in fact, there's a lot of in the book. There's Thrawn going, fucking Death Stars, fucking the Emperor. What the fuck was he thinking? Just putting everything on a Death Star. What a fucking idiot.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of sort of thoughts that that if Thrawn were in a position to be the Emperor, I think that if Thrawn won, just hypothetically speaking, because obviously he's back in the universe in Ahsoka, so there's potential for that.
Which one was he in Ahsoka? I haven't watched the entire series.
Oh, you probably haven't got to him yet, but he's the blue guy.
He's right at the end. He's the blue guy.
As well.
Fair enough.
It's probably worth watching Rebels, because he's in that, and it explains what the fuck is going on in Ahsoka with him.
Do I have to?
Yes, Rebels is very good. We'll discuss that in a bit.
Got loads of cats in. But I think if Thrawn had been the Emperor, I don't think it would have been as bad to be part of the Empire. And I also don't think that the rebels would have won. And I think that everything actually would have run very smoothly.
Are you saying basically good people on both sides?
He's not good. He's not a good person, but I also don't think he's a bad person. He's just the Empire is who I work for, and I'm going to get this job done, and I'm going to reassert myself into the galaxy. I can't see him being the Emperor.
Maybe like Moff Tarkin.
Yeah.
If it'd been Moff Tarkin in that situation, they probably wouldn't have lost. But yeah, he's just ruthlessly efficient at what he does.
And really clever, the way that the books kind of go, because the books focus on different characters in different chapters, to kind of give you so you're getting kind of different parts of the picture all building up at the same time until you hit that sort of that kind of final third of each of the books, which gives you more of an insight into kind of how all of those pieces sort of slot together. He will explain himself to the regular admiral that's with him, who is an awesome character, Pelion, who is a great character because he doubts Thrawn quite a lot. He's he can't foresee this can't be right, he's having he must be making it up, and Thrawn is nearly always right, and Pelion's there going, how did he do that? And he's just a very normal bloke as well that's just found himself still in charge of a very small fleet of Star Destroyers after the New Republic has won. And Thrawn always explains himself, but not in a really overtly exposition-y kind of a way. And it's always, how he does it is always super clever.
Yeah, I think to finish off the book bit, I think there is like we said earlier, the storytelling in the books is a lot more expansive for the universe, and it gives a much less, I think, as the bad guys aren't just people that hit you with a stick. You know, there's a lot more thinking going on, and it laid a lot of groundwork for what happened in the Disney universe. But I don't know if they worked really well with the film. But I don't know if they made those into films at that point, because you're right, because the book's built up in that fashion, right? This is happening, that's happening, and that happens in Star Wars in the movies. You have the sideways slide or downward slide, and suddenly it's the Death Star, and then they're back to Tatooine, and they're trying to build that story up. I think there was too much of that for it to be each book to be one film. Each book was probably 3 films, and you could have made a trilogy out of the whole, out of a whole book, and then you could have made the whole 9 films out of the 3 books. So,
well, you say that, but
I have.
But we've learned that single books into trilogies really don't work.
Well, not if they're done bad.
Hobbit!
Right then, Mark.
Yeah, no, that's something stuck in my throat.
You got a Billy Collin in your throat there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but then this took us into the Clone Wars. So I don't want to spend too long on the Clone Wars because they're kind of a really weird middle ground. And we ended up in 2000 with Lucas took control of the franchise back, basically. I mean, obviously it was always his. He had veto on the books because Joris C'baoth was supposed to be a clone of Obi-Wan, and he was like, no. And the Rook species, the Nogri, were going to be called the Sith, and he was like,
Nogri,
that's right, like, no. And it's worth pointing out as well, the book sold over 15 million copies.
Yeah,
right? That's quite a lot.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of people that say the same thing that I do, that it would have been a way better ending to the to Star Wars.
Groundbreaking, influential.
When were they written?
91, 92?
Yeah, they've been alive as long as I have.
Oh, bless.
But yeah, so he took control back. West End Games unfortunately went bankrupt, but a lot of their work kind of went into the next generation of Star Wars. So I don't want to spend too long in the Clone Wars because, but I kind of do. They marked a return to film, right? So everything had been in book format or role-playing format, and they were like, let's do some more films. And Mark's unhappiness with Death Stars wasn't portrayed in the Clone Wars. They were 3 very different stories, but a lot of people think they didn't handle Anakin very well or whatever, but that's not really what we're here to discuss. We're here to talk about how that change of format benefited or didn't benefit the franchise, whether it was a worthwhile step back into films, and indeed whether the last 3 films were a worthwhile step back into films, because I think around that time they predate, unfortunately for them, I think, things like Battlestar Galactica, Firefly, and a lot of and even a lot of the Star Trek shows, which were really popular around late 90s and early noughties. Stargate's another really good example. And they looked at what was going on. They were like, well, these TV shows are doing really well. Let's make 3 films. And I think what they should have done is probably make a TV show at that point. But it's hard to discuss this with Mark because he hasn't watched them.
Sorry.
No, not at all.
I think that I think you're right, and I think that now Star Wars sort of becoming more series based is exactly what it needs to kind of to maintain that franchise, and but also to expand it, right?
Okay,
to take it out into new places.
I would definitely agree with that.
So before we go into that, then, shall we say that the films themselves, they use CGI as we discussed. They weren't as dramatically excellent to watch. The actors were unhappy in those environments, so that probably wasn't a good medium for storytelling. But the concept of things like the clones that they used brought a whole new dynamic to those early years of Star Wars before A New Hope was set. They brought this whole new concept of how the Emperor manipulated the Jedi and how the rise and fall of the Old Order happened, which is interesting. It's all right. But it led to the 2003 series and Cartoon Network of the Clone Wars by Jenny Tartakovsky, which is very good. I was just touching it briefly. It was all right. It was in the style of Johnny Bravo for animation, and it was excellent. But it only made 20-something episodes. I really loved it. A lot of people really loved it. It was very cool. But in 2008, Lucasfilm basically went, "We should do that. We should probably have a go at making that." And they made a film for TV, which it basically told the story of what the fuck Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin initially was the concept, what they were doing in between the second and third film. let's make this. And they made 7 seasons of this, right? They made 7 seasons of this
It was
incredibly
so good.
entertaining. Well, in most places it was a very entertaining film, but it carried on the stories of those 2 dudes. But it also introduced Ahsoka. That's where Ahsoka comes from. If you haven't watched it, Mark, it's worth watching Ahsoka's story because
Ahsoka was one of the ones that I actually quite enjoyed, and I would probably try and finish it off at some point.
Yeah. So if you watch her story, because she was portrayed by Ashley Eckstein, who everyone thought should have been Ahsoka.
Should have been Ahsoka. I still think that. I will die on that hill. It should have been Ashley Eckstein.
But the whole and it introduced like really cool characters. Jim Cummings played him.
Hondo
Anaka, who's like again one of my all-time favorites.
Cad Bane
comes into it, and he's in Boba Fett later. And obviously Katie Sackhoff's in it as
Bo-Katan.
People like Tim Curry's in it. He's Palpatine for the series.
He's a great Palpatine.
Of course he is.
Huh?
I said, of course he is.
Yeah. Clancy Brown's in it. There's loads. It's because it's not Darth Maul.
The Darth Savage Press.
Yeah, Savage Press, and it introduces so many amazingly good characters into the story arc. And it being a TV series, it also being cartoon, so it's a lot more. They've gone like, okay, we don't want to do models and stuff. We don't want to CGI. We just do it as a cartoon, and it's incredibly well told. And it introduces the clones. All the clones are like their own characters, their own personalities, and it tells their story, which is really important when you come to stuff like Rebels, and then even into Boba Fett and stuff.
And Bad Batch,
which is incredibly good as well, and probably worth mentioning later. That whole idea was, and it explores the Force in different ways, and the whole thing of Ahsoka, and you won't know this, but at the end of Ahsoka, it touches back to episodes from the Clone Wars in really deep way, because there are very confusing episodes in the Clone Wars. We're like, what the fuck is this about? Through the Force, and then at the end of Ahsoka, you're like, oh, it's trying to explain that episode from the Clone Wars. But their ability to explore new and exciting planets is really good. They go fucking everywhere in the Clone Wars. They go all across the galaxy and all across the universe, and there's great and tremendous space battles. But all the while, they're telling this story of how the Jedi Order is actually corrupt, or are they doing the right thing? Are the clones fighting the right fight? And the two sides of political kind of ambition being dominated by, and it's very well done, and it tells the Clone Wars story and everything behind it, and all that political kind of upheaval beautifully well, and how the ambitions of a few people, a few corrupt dickheads in government, can upset the lives of thousands of people across the universe, and the people in charge just do not give a shit, and how much you should fucking hate them. Sorry, banged on the table. It's a big point for me, though. It's important banging. I like to get that out of the way in the middle of a show.
They who shall be known as Kit will not be happy.
Well, they are best Kit and will not be sad at me.
This is true. I think the decision to make the Clone Wars as a cartoon, as this cartoon, was an absolute stroke of genius on Lucasfilm's part, because it can not only do you get that kind of, these are 20-minute episodes, like 15 to 20 minutes an episode. They're on the at face value, they're designed to entertain children, and they are very entertaining for children, but as a grown-up Star Wars fan, I can hear your cat.
I can have a cat. He's come in to tell me it's lunchtime.
No.
Okay, Rocky.
Like kind of bringing in that format of, oh, hi, Rocky. I've been entirely distracted by fluffy black and white cat now.
I have. I miss my black and white cats. Can I just look at yours for a while?
He's off.
No, he's leaving. Bringing in kind of that format, and basically kind of giving you kind of like context, like little bits and pieces, like little tiny planets over here, and the introduction of my favorite Star Wars vehicle of all time, the ATTE.
So cool.
Which basically moves like a giant beetle.
We have Lego
It's
ones
like
of
a,
those to make.
it's kind of like a big long cylinder, and then it's got like 6 legs that just kind of, it's like a rhino beetle, I
You were
think is
so
how they
excited when
based
it
it.
appeared in Rebels.
Yeah, yeah, I loved them, but it's just, it shows you everything that you need to know that can't be covered in the films in a very
Well,
entertaining and visual way.
this need to know thing, yeah, I think that's part of the reason that I've basically stopped enjoying Star Wars, because you're listing all of these series, all of these backstories and characters, and all the way they link into each other, yeah,
Hmm.
and it feels like you need to know all of that. Nothing can be standalone. Nothing can be viewed as itself and just go, oh, this is a really entertaining film, or this is a
I
really
think that's a
entertaining
common
TV
complaint.
series.
Yeah,
I think that's a very, very common
Yeah.
complaint.
And for me, that's a no go,
but
because I'm not swimming in this huge ocean of Star Wars, and writing down all the Blob McCaffrey and whatever fucking names he's come up with next.
but
But
I mean,
you guys are just saying, oh yes, there's so and so and so and so. Oh yeah, and so and so and so and so. How the hell do you remember all those names? I can't remember half the people down at my local pub.
Actually, I can't remember them. I just look at Holly. I go, the guy Jim Cummings plays him, and Holly's like Hondo Anaka, and I'm like, that's the dude. He's really cool.
and I remember all these things because my brain is wired weirdly.
Yeah.
But like this is the reason why I still think that like Star Wars caters, or has the potential to cater for so many different people across so many different formats, right? Because you've said to us, like, I really love Rogue One, I really love Andor. Those are the 2 series that feel like, or the film in the series that feel like they're designed so that you don't, like all of that, they are very kind of standalone.
Yeah, I was going to come
Whereas,
to the Mandalorian and stuff as well, which
yeah,
shows that I know you don't like the Mandalorian, Mark, but they are shows that you can just watch without watching anything else.
yeah. And I
Yeah,
don't,
just-
I would be the first person to say that I don't know everything about, like, Stephen knows so much more about the universe than I do. I just remember the names. Our friend John knows everything
Get well
about
soon,
Star
John.
Wars. Get well soon, John. But he knows everything about Star Wars, and he could talk about it for hours and hours and hours, and I get really lost. I get really lost in the chronology of Star Wars. But when I watch things like Clone Wars and Rebels, when I read things like Heir to the Empire, I get lost. They are good enough that I get lost in them, and the things that I don't know, I'll just Google.
So just to also cover that, I think that a lot of the people that made stuff like the Clone Wars, like Dave Filoni, for example, are people that are still writing the stories now. So their passion and love for their project is just ongoing. So they're still writing the stuff they started writing, 20 years ago. I'm here for that because I wrote a LARP game that was like on for 25 years, and every ounce of my passion went into that. And exactly the same thing you're describing there happened when people come into my system and go, "What the fuck is going on?" The players that were in it would try to tell them, and let's say 10 people come into my game, and this wasn't a problem for me. This is what I wanted to do, so it didn't bother me when people went, "I don't like this." I go, "Cool, go somewhere else where this isn't like it is." People would come in, and 10 people would come in a group, and 3 of them would stay because they'd listen to the stories and go, "I want to be a part of this," and they'd learn it all from the beginning.
I was one of those people,
and be able to live it, and that is one form of storytelling, right? And that part of it is not for you. And that's important for our listeners to know, because that's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about how storytelling changes in the format and what people can take away from it. And those stories not being as accessible is important. It's something that people need to address. A LARP system like I'm running, sure, that's not a problem because there's thousands of other LARP systems that you can go and play in. But if you want to be a part of the Star Wars universe and you have to go through this process of understanding it or watching it from the very beginning, that's hard. Because there's only one Star Wars universe, yeah, and I get that.
I think maybe the reason, obviously, because Star Wars had just come out when I first saw the original trilogy, so there was none of this baggage connected with it. You were learning as it went. It was all from a clean slate, and that made it very accessible for me. And I think the further on it's gone, the less accessible it's become for me, because I don't really feel that invested in the whole universe anymore. I like the pretty pictures. It's always pretty, but the storytelling has kind of lost me.
Yeah, I think we were getting a little bit bogged down in the Clone Wars. Go on, Holly.
I was just going to say that I think that that's a really important reason why they should have made 7, 8, and 9 as heir to the Empire, because there is a lack of like definitive straight through characters
There's
that
no
you can
continuity.
there's no continuity. You can get really invested in like Leia and Han's relationship in Heir to the Empire after 4, 5, and 6. Like that continuity, I think would have helped.
Absolutely, that's what I wanted to see when they said, "Oh, Star Wars has come back." Yes, great. It's going to be a prequel. And you go, what? Why? Well, I don't care what's happened before. We're in the middle of it now. Just carry on. I don't have to go back and do the bloody start of it.
Even the last 3, wasn't it? They didn't do what everyone is refers to now as the Picard moment, where at the end of the Picard season 3, everyone, the original crew on the bridge of the Enterprise flying,
and that was brilliant.
Yeah. And in the last 3 Star Wars films, they just kill off the original heroes, and no one gets to be in it.
The Picard moment made me cry so hard.
But it was brilliant. It was. I mean, I guess I was a bigger fan of Star Trek than I was of Star Wars, just because it was all the episodes was kind of standalone, and it was an easier thing to understand, basically. But that Picard moment was just glorious.
Yeah,
because you go, the gang's all back.
Mm-hmm.
This is fantastic,
and
you're absolutely right. They didn't give us that, and we deserved that.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's true, and I think that's a big. And the accessibility of it is very important. But just to finish up on the Clone Wars, I think my own experience after watching the second 3 films, or the first 3 films, however you want to put them, I didn't really want to watch Star Wars after that. So I missed the Clone Wars as was, and then Rebels kind of came out. I watched a bit of that when I want to watch this. Oh, I didn't want to watch it because I hadn't watched the Clone Wars. And I was like, oh, fuck it, I'm not going to watch it then. And then my brain went, don't be a dick. Go back and watch the Clone Wars. So I went back and watched the Clone Wars, and I found it incredibly informative. And I realised now that I'm saying it, that basically fucking everything that you want to know about Star Wars, you can't watch it unless you've watched the Clone Wars. I think it's probably true to say that so much of it, if you ignore the 3 shit films, so much of what happens in Disney is based out of the last Lucasfilm's Clone Wars. So much of it is based there. I think if you need to watch anything, it's that. Anyway.
I mean, but also everybody needs to watch Rebels because it's the best piece of TV.
We'll come to that in a second.
Okay.
Stop interrupting me. Jesus Christ.
Sorry.
Oh my God. And so on and so forth.
I get excited.
Don't make me play jizz.
Thanks for the clarification.
Clarinetification.
Very good.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I think, yes. So, Clone Wars, really good step in the direction of storytelling, and maybe reliant a little bit too much for everything else to focus around. But the mouse struck back after a while, and the rise of Lego was our next bit, section 3. Although we have fuck it. On October the 30th in 2012, Disney acquired Lucasfilm for $4.5 billion. $4.5 billion for a franchise that started by somebody putting some peas into a hamster or whatever it was. I'm sure it involved real money, but I'm just saying that as a thing. Mark, you had some facts for us about what $4 billion meant.
Well, yeah, it was because it was kind of a political thing, really. When all these sums get bandied around, so it's kind of, you say it's $1 million, or it's $1 billion, or it's $1 trillion, and you kind of go, okay, well they're just names, aren't they? There can't be a huge difference between them. There's a huge difference between them. And I learnt it by seconds. So 1 million seconds is about roughly 11.5 days. 1 billion seconds is 31.5 years. And you just go, huh? And then 1 trillion is 31,500 years, something like that.
Human brains can't do numbers that big. No.
Anyway, next time you listen to some politician going billions, you just go, hang on, that's a lot of money. And it is a lot of money when you buy up the Star Wars franchise. But
Yeah.
then the mouse has a shitload of money.
Yeah.
I think that's a technical term.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
A butt ton is actually a viable
We need to regret
measurement.
this line
Is
of
it?
conversation.
And
Yeah,
a fuck
it is.
ton?
I don't know about a fuck ton, but a butt ton is. It's got to do with wine. But I'm going to
Well,
stop talking now because Stephen's
with
making
that-
that face again.
Butt ton of money, Kathleen
We
Kennedy,
like it when
never
Stephen
Lucasfilm
makes
at the
that
time,
face, though.
became the president and was then the executive officer that made the Star Wars films, right? A lot has happened since then. And I think it's fair to say that from our point of view, given what we said about the last three films, the Clone Wars films, that the storytelling by the time we got around to the last three films had become pretty stagnant. Yeah.
Yep.
Look, it's some bigger Death Star things.
Oh God! Don't get me started. You know where I'll go if I get started. Carry
Yeah,
on.
and I don't want to talk about them. I'd never want to talk about these films. I watched them at the cinema. The first one, was all right, and then the other two were just so bad, so bad. I just don't want to talk about them. But from again, Disney were like, cool, we'll make the films because that's what Star Wars is. But you know what? That Clone Wars went well. That did well. That was a good bit of business for Lucasfilm. They made the films, and they were like, yeah, this whole Clone Wars thing has done well. So they moved into making TV shows. That looks like Holly's back again.
Hi.
And that, I think, again, proven to be the area where we're looking at the progression of storytelling, and including stuff now like the games they've brought out. And I don't know if I have time to talk about them, but there's been a whole genre of PC games that came out, from the early 90s all the way through to now, and a lot of the characters in those games have become very canonized into Star Wars literature. We those geeks amongst us who have played through the back catalogue of Star Wars games know a lot of Carl Catan style names and bits and pieces of people that have kind of come out of there. But we don't have time to talk about that. But I'm just pointing at it, I'm nodding at it, so our listeners who are going like, why haven't they mentioned those? I know they exist. Mark and Holly are looking blankly, but I know they're there. I know they're there, people. I know they're important. And did you go? Is that what you just said?
Mark and I might know they exist just because we
Do you
have
know they
blank
exist,
looks
though?
on our faces.
I don't. I've got no idea what he's been talking about for about the past half hour.
There we go. God, I'm describing it. Anyway, so the TV shows were like kind of really powerful and important. And as I've already discussed, some of them pick up old stories and continue telling them, and some of them are standalone. I've got a list of ones I want to discuss briefly because we're time again. Rebels for me was probably the most important of the Star Wars shows in the transition from Lucasfilm to Disney, because it really gave off the Disney style of like kind of a kind of a happier medium for storytelling. Everyone was a bit kind of like went back to bearing in mind I talked about like before, Star Wars being seen through the eyes of children is probably what it was originally aimed at, like young adults or whatever. So giving it a happier edge was cool. But if you haven't watched Rebels, all I can really say is the ending is like truly heartbreaking, and probably one of the most powerful endings to a show I've enjoyed for many years. But it reintroduced you to that very early era of A New Hope, right? So it reintroduced you to that bit of the storytelling when the bad guys are building the Death Star. They're taking over the universe, but they say just before A New Hope, realistically speaking, just before Rogue One is when it's set. And they're telling the story of the rise of the Empire and how terrible it's all going, and it's all bad. And you really get the idea of freedom fighters. And then they slowly introduce the main characters from the Clone Wars in Ahsoka, and they slowly introduce the main characters from A New Hope in like Princess Leia and Lando Calrissian and that kind of stuff, and they kind of come into it. And you're getting the feet in both worlds kind of aspect. And it's all told from the story point of view of the characters now in Ahsoka. So you've got like Hera Syndulla and Chopper, and
Ezra Bridger,
and Mandalorian lady.
Bo-Katan.
No.
Oh, Sabine
Wren. Thank you. Sorry, I'm bringing them a bit dead there. But they're all in it, and they're doing their wonderful storytelling. And at the end of that show, when it finished, it was the show for me, which Holly keeps using my analogy, but I'm going to use it myself, which was when it finished, it felt like a bunch of people I knew really well had left my house, and I didn't think I'd ever see them again. And it made me really sad at the time, but also really impassioned for more show. You know, I wanted to get more involved in the world of the story they're telling. And that meant that I could go back and watch New Hope again, because that was what it was about to lead into. Yeah. But instead we got Andor, you know, and Rogue One. And how different were they?
It was so good. So good.
Andor, how much did I enjoy Andor? Quite a bit. I mean, compared to The Mandalorian and Boba Fett, quite a lot. And Rogue One, I just thought is the best film and remains the best film that's been produced since the original trilogy. I just thought it was a brilliant film.
Well, how different do you think that sounds from how I just described Rebels, though?
I don't know. I'd have to watch Rebels, but I'm not.
I've described Rebels as being like quite a good feeling, happy.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, okay, Rogue One was not a happy film. That was quite grim. Andor was, I wouldn't call it a happy film. It was a bit of an action film and stuff. I mean, I'm all up for happy Star Wars. You need a bit of fun in the universe.
But my point is that Andor was a TV show, but like my point is that the two of them, you know, there's a really nice blending coming together in Disney of like shows that you can watch at different ages, which I think is quite.
Yeah, I think that's quite a thing that Star Wars, the whole franchise, struggles with now, because it's trying to bring in new people, but it's also trying to feed the old guard who, you know, were there at the beginning or more or less and have been following it ever since. So to get a balance between your young viewers and your older viewers, that's quite a juggling act, I think. And I'm not sure how well they achieve that, but they're definitely up against that, I think, as an issue.
Yeah, but I think that the way they're telling the stories is very hit and miss, though. I mean, like though the shows I've just outlined, Rebels, I thought told their story beautifully well, and ended it really well. They didn't like try and drag it out. I think it was like 4 seasons. They didn't.
It was, yeah. They
try
didn't
and make extra shit just to take it up to a standard 7 or whatever. Yeah, and Rogue One, great film, as you say, beautifully done, and they made Andor as a support show for it, and that was also really well done. Then, like the Book of Boba Fett was all right. It was watchable. I found it okay. Mostly because it had Gamorrean guards in it.
That was what you were most excited about, was the Gamorrean guards.
Yeah. I was really pleased to see Gamorrean guards. But it's not up there with Andor, in my opinion. And Obi-Wan was all right, but it's not up there with Andor.
Watched 2 episodes of Obi-Wan and went, can't be arsed.
So I think the thing with that is that I mean I really like slow TV. I really like slow burn, lots of exposition, like get me right in there and have me understand everything that's going on TV. And I loved Obi-Wan for that. I really loved it because there was so much just monotony in it. And it really,
really like selling it to me, Holly.
No. But I mean, it's you know, it's people are always going to have like, you know, like fast-paced stuff I can sometimes find quite difficult to get on with, but this sort of, you know, just you really got the sense and the feeling of how desperately awful Obi-Wan's life was when he wasn't, you know, like when he was hiding, and it kind of gives you a bit more of an insight into why Alec Guinness was so grumpy.
Fair enough.
And of course, Ahsoka, which I thought was a really good carry-on. But I mean, like Mark has said that he hasn't finished watching Ahsoka, but it sounded like he was quite enjoying what he was watching.
I will.
But again, that story starting in the Clone Wars, yeah. So to understand Ahsoka's journey properly, you need to have watched all of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, but I don't want to. I'm not going to.
Want to. I'm just saying, if to understand it properly, you would need to then watch Rebels, and then Ahsoka, and little bits of the Mandalorian stuff that she was in.
And this comes back to my core argument. There's too much to learn. It just does not draw me in anymore.
Yeah, so the machine will keep running. It will keep producing more shows.
Of course it will.
Some of it remains standalone. Some of it remains, you know, you need a lot of immersive knowledge to really take on board what's happening in the story. But the one question is, does it really still show that story of rebellion that it's always been about? Is it really showing that fight against the Empire? Holly's shaking her head.
No, I don't think it does. I don't think it's. I think over time, I think the last time it really did that well was. I think it did it well in Rebels. I think it did it well in Rogue One, and I think it did it well in Andor. I think the other series are quite supplementary to that. I think Ahsoka so far has. Ahsoka was a bit more of a miss for me than anything else. Because it felt quite sanitized. And I don't necessarily know if I think the spirit is there, and I think the spirit of rebellion will always run through Star Wars. But I don't think it's as strong as it used to be, for sure.
I think Andor certainly had that more film-esque attitude where it was showing different parts of the universe developing. Andor was showing quite a lot of the aspects of rebellion going on, because you had obviously people being put in a prison whilst people on a planet being quite happily involved in their fight against rebellion, being Mon Mothma and whatever. There was a lot of film aspect to it, but again, it supported Rogue One, which was quite cool, and there'll be more of it. More Andor is coming. What do you think, Mark? Do you think it still shows off its aspects of fighting events, fascism, and
Well, as we have established that I haven't really watched a huge amount of it, I guess I didn't get a lot of that through what I saw of Ahsoka. I mean, yeah, there was more of that in Andor. There was definitely he was on the run. It was, there were bad guys and good guys and kind of grey guys in between, Han Solo-y types. But yeah, I mean, I'm in all honesty, for a geek-based podcast, I'm not the right person to be asking questions about current Star Wars. I can talk to you till the cows come home about the original ones and how that was for me, but I don't want to have to read an encyclopedia before I can enjoy a show or a film.
all the reason.
And I don't think that the universe of Star Wars is that engaging for me anymore. It was engaging originally because it was new, it was fresh, and now I think it feels stale. And I think, as you've explained, that there is so much interconnection now that it's just, I don't care anymore. It's like having to read the Silmarillion to understand The Hobbit. That I enjoy The Hobbit. I don't want to have to read the Silmarillion. And likewise, I enjoyed the original Star Wars. I've enjoyed a couple of the series and one of the additional films, but I don't want to have to read an encyclopedia to enjoy anything else. Sorry.
So I love that. I love that interconnectivity. I love that whole aspect of like, what can I find out about this thing from 10 years ago by watching this thing now? Like, how can I weave those threads of this giant world together? I say that I have failed to read the Silmarillion like 3 times now. I've started.
I got it on tape the other day out of a charity shop.
I'm gonna have to.
It's like reading the Bible for fun.
It is. I'm gonna have to audiobook the Silmarillion, I think. But I love how that all kind of ties together, and that's why I think that even though I don't know everything about Star Wars, and I still have to check, and I still have to, like, I don't. No, I'm the first person to say that I don't know everything, especially about like ship classification and how many berths they all have, which a lot of people do know. That's a part of the fandom that I'm not interested in. I'm interested in that world building of it more, and I think that Star Wars provides avenues, no matter what part of the Star Wars universe you're interested in. Star Wars provides avenues for people to explore the fandom in like so many different ways, and
Granted,
that's something that a lot of fandoms don't do, or don't seem to necessarily do. So
for me, if we're bringing our thoughts together now for the end of the pod, after the whole talking about it for 3 sessions, Star Wars began for me as a journey of inspiration when I was a kid. being those heroes was something that was really important to me when I was a child, and running around the playground, understanding who they were wasn't so much because I was 4. But as I've grown up, I've watched the first 3 films 1,000 times, right? And I started doing the role-playing game in the 80s, and the medium of telling those stories changed for me. And I started to tell stories about the people that I'd grown up idolizing as heroes. And as it moved forward and onwards, and we watched 3 not as good films, and then the Clone Wars came, I fell in love with more people that I thought were incredibly well portrayed. Well, their stories were well told through a different format. And in each of those scenarios, as we've said in the last pod, I found that whenever I heard the music, I felt empowered. I felt that removal of fear, I guess, I had when I was a kid, or removal of loneliness, or the connection that I felt through knowing other fans and other people in that fandom and talking about our experiences, with the only connection that we had in life being Star Wars, was really important to me. And the music reminded me of that, and the characters reminded me of that, and I wanted to watch more of it. And as the story mediums have changed and the mouse took over, I think it appeals to my son well. I think he's loving it. He's finding the same connections, and we're finding connections. And I think that it's teaching him to be a better human being in many ways, because we only have, as people, each other to learn from. And as storytellers, we are trying to impart our lessons in life through whatever medium we choose to put it out there in. Star Wars was George Lucas's. He told his stories based on his own experiences, and here we are. I think it's really good. I think there are some hit and miss shows. I think there are some tremendous shows, and I think there are some incredible characters. But at the end of the day, if you said to me, do you want to go back and watch it all again from the beginning, including even the Ewok saga, I would say yes. I would like to go on that journey again, and I would happily do it. I think that's important, and I think it does. I think the story of Rebellion is still strong in it, even if it teaches us a lot about the day-to-day life of people who are living through it, through Star Wars, in the little worlds they create, and the droids and how they bring everything to life. I think it's good. I think it's still there.
Enough said.
Can't. Yep. Words.
Okay.
No, I can't.
Well,
I can't do
our last
anything but
section was
agree
very
with that.
short. Our last section is very short. The story of Rebellion in the real world. As I said earlier, I'm not afraid to say that fascism is shit, and Star Wars helped teach me that. And I hope that people still continue to watch it and still learn to stand up against people that use things like racism and, anything that generally ends in ism, of that ilk, as a weapon of fear.
Yep.
To spread hate.
Totally.
And I hope people continue
fascism.
To live and learn through that. And I'm very glad that this country has kicked out some awful people, but I'm very sad that too many people in this country have embraced a different form of evil. Yeah. Right. So.
Well, it's always good to end on a high, isn't it?
Well,
it keeps people coming back for the next episode.
If you found that a bit too much, listeners, just wind back to my previous speech about why it's a good thing to love Star Wars. But yeah, you've got to understand that the world, Star Wars made the world a great place, but there's some people that make it shit, and we've always got to remember that. But beautiful people, beautiful listeners, wonderful people out there. That is us. We have spoken for around 3 and a bit hours quite solidly about Star Wars to you. And as we said at the start, it wasn't going to be a critical acclamation of the films and anything else. It was always about how it has changed through its lifespan, what it means to us, because that's kind of what this show's about. Some point we may well speak more specifically about certain episodes or certain films and be a bit more critical in the individual aspects of other pods that we do. But the way that we operate, and I think this was worth underlining this, is we just kind of talk about what we feel like talking about on a day, really. We might make a decision in the week beforehand, and then I'll suddenly have to write a short script seconds before the pod starts. But we are a bit haphazard, but the general feeling of geekdom goes onwards. We're having a lot of fun, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll carry on doing this for a while. See how it
Oh,
goes.
thanks, Mark. That's really gracious of you.
I didn't realise this was some kind of temporary interview that we were doing. So seven episodes interview, see if Mark wants to carry on doing it. Great. But we're going to take a quick break on our next episode from talking about the changing of stories from mediums, because after this episode that's coming up, so there's this episode, another one, and then we're at Fantasy Forest. So we didn't want to kind of get into something new, and we did say a couple of episodes ago we're going to try and break it up a bit with some interviews. So we're going to have our first special guests on the Tiaro, and each of us draws from a different kind of aspect of the hobby, of our geekdom or whatever. And I got first pick along, and Holly kind of involved in this as well. We're bringing on the folks from Molinarius Games, who are a game manufacturing company, board game manufacturing company, who make games such as Ocean Pods and Shoal. And we recently went to the expo and we met them again because we met them before, and they demoed a game for us called Time Troopers. And sure, we'll talk a little bit about their games, but we're going to talk a lot about how they got involved in their own personal geekdoms and why they love them so much. And we're going to kind of just rap with them for an hour. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Marvellous.
Maybe
It's
we'll
good to know that the trap worked and you managed to catch some guests.
Well, yeah.
Did you struggle much?
No. Quite pliant, really.
Excellent.
Anyone know about Molinarius Games, Beans?
I'm not, well, I mean, you know, they're fantastic people. They're lovely. They gave me stickers, which is always something I appreciate. And
Easily bought.
Easily bought for stickers. Yeah, absolutely.
Chinese.
Ooh. I think that they're excellent people, and I'm looking forward to talking to them some more.
I'm looking forward to meeting them.
Cool. There we go. Right, so have a great week, people. Be safe. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Power for us. Goodbye. Have an amazing week. Much love, everyone. You have been listening to A Geek Tragedy with me, Plague Mantle, and my best friend, the excellent Holly Properly, and our actually famous guy, Mark Cordory. If you like this, there is plenty more at patreon.com/A Geek Tragedy. Production is by Kit Britnell. Our logo and artwork is by markcordory.com. Music is by Borislaw Kozielski. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Geek Tragedy. Email us at geektragedypodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe, leave us a rating and a review. And don't forget to tell all your geeky friends. Also, a big shout out to all of our genius geeks. We adore each and every one of you. And of course, much love. Take care of each other.